alliances is probably the only sales motion that's predicated on the fact that you have a gap in your portfolio.
Values are so core to how you operate on a day-to-day basis, how you communicate, how you work together, how you share.
The purpose is understood and everyone's got the energy behind it. With the alignment there, moving it forward.
We're going to see an acceleration around cyber threat protection. It's not a case of if you're going to get attacked, it's a case of when and how you recover. I used to say to many of our sales teams, every morning you get up, you got to think, what would Archimedes do?
I love that.
I really love that. Welcome back to Soapbox, the podcast where we share practical insights from industry experts on the pressing issues around achieving B2B business growth. I'm Charlotte, CEO and founder of Ice.Blue.Sky. I'm here with our guests today and looking forward to the conversation.
I'm really looking forward to the conversation today, actually. We're talking about alliances and taking a step back to really examine them from an analytical point of view. So I'm Francesca from Ice.Blue.Sky, co-director, and with us is Paul. So Paul, why don't you introduce us to yourself, share a little bit about your journey into alliances and where that passion came from?
Well, thank you, Francesca and Charlotte. Delighted to be here in this really cool studio today. So I've been in the IT industry for a long, long time. Started my entry into IT in 1986, believe it or not, as a trainee computer operator.
Don't believe it.
Pre-PC, pre-internet, pre-everything.
Was that System 36? The IBM green screens.
Actually, you know it. So that's my heritage. Long journey since then. But my entry into alliances was 2010. So I came up through far more of a kind of vocational route. I did day release at college in the early years, things like that. But I was in technical support. I was in engineering. Then I moved into pre-sales. And then eventually in 2010, I got invited back to work for NetApp. I'd done a previous tour of duty with them years before, but got invited back when they came to market with a solution called FlexPod, which was one of the emerging converged infrastructure stacks. So it was a combination of NetApp, Cisco, and VMware. And my role was really to build that market. I was owning the technical alliance for them. And, in a little under 4 or 5 years, we grew it from zero to, multi-billion-dollar business worldwide. And that was my first entry into alliances.
Excellent. And I think that as a route to market alliances is really interesting, and how you actually go about building that and the purpose for alliance as well. No,
it's a great question. I think, one of the things that drove me into alliances, I suppose, and what interested me was the, I suppose these days they call it the force multiplier effect. 1 + 1 = 3. It's a great marketing phrase.
It is. I'm just going to write that down.
Take a note of that. But why do companies form alliances in the first place? And it's really to achieve a goal or a sales acceleration that they couldn't otherwise gain. So in actual fact, alliances is probably the only sales motion that's predicated on the fact that you have a gap in your portfolio, right? That you have a deficiency, or you have an inability to reach a new market that you want to get to. So you form an alliance. And that, for me, is where it all started. I was fascinated by that. And, it's very early on, I worked for quite a number of startups, pre-IPO companies. And one of the early CEOs had this great phrase, great pitch. He used to talk about alliances. And he used to say, alliances were formed thousands and thousands of years ago. You've got to go back to the time of Archimedes and before, right? And what did Archimedes say? He said, give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum on which to rest it, and I can move the world. And that has really been my philosophy. I used to say to many of our sales teams, every morning you get up, you got to think, what would Archimedes do?
I love that. I really love that. And it's because we discovered we have a similar background to each other, don't we? Because I was in pre-sales a long time ago and then went into alliances. And I agree with you. What I always loved was that stacking of value.
Right.
And when you find as well sort of niche alliance partners who are excellent in a particular market, that's always really interesting too, because they bring that extra layer of knowledge and value.
Definitely. And I think, getting back to your intro, taking an analytical look at alliances, I've been an alliance practitioner now for over 15 years and got the scars to prove it. And there's no one model is better than another. And what I mean by that is that as companies form alliances, typically what they're looking for in an alliance is a growth engine. Yeah. It's sales acceleration. But if you don't build the foundational pillars from day one, you will fail. Yes. It's probably, one of the most exciting areas, but also one of the ones with the highest level of failure. Yeah. And, in our sector, look, we're all about technology. We're all about high tech, right? But unless you also put down foundational pillars, so you have a commercial pillar. So, am I going to resell my alliance partner's products? Am I going to meet in the channel? Yes. We're both going to meet at the customer. Am I going to take an equity stake in the company, or are we going to form a new company? All of those are valid models, right? But equally, you have to have an operational pillar. Yes. Because certainly in my experience, one of the pitfalls or one of the main hurdles is operational friction. Okay. Equally, you have to have a strategical pillar. Yes. So it's one of, what does, has C-level bought into it? What are the expectations? What are the shared value? Do we have a defined mission statement together? Yeah. Because ultimately it's sales 101, an alliance that works well, people buy from people. Yeah. Yes. And it also, I think, enables us to, I think it resonates with our customers. Certainly the consumers of our solution, because alliances is all around us. We're consuming it all the time. Yeah. I left the house yesterday to head down to London, and I went on my Uber app, and when you think about it, Uber, you've got an Uber app. Yeah. You've got the app store. Mm-hmm. You've got a payment processing element to it. You've got your driver. There's a huge sort of marketplace ecosystem of alliances there that are all interdependent on each other and give us this seamless as a service offering. Mm-hmm. Definitely. That's alliances in action.
Yeah. I love that. And I guess as well with those three pillars that you were talking about, they must change over time, because obviously a fairly new, immature relationship will be much more tactical, whereas the longer it goes on, the more embedded everything gets.
And you've put your finger on it, because there's a fourth pillar. Three's not enough.
We didn't rehearse this. No.
And that is one that I think is probably the most underestimated pillar, and it's culture.
Yes. Yeah.
Because if you don't have that, if you don't resonate, and you don't have that open communication, agreed scorecards, metrics. Yeah. What does good look like? How do you measure the value, the contribution to the business? If that's not in place, and if you're not all rowing in the same direction, it's going to fail.
And you've got to have the same set of values, haven't you, in order to support that? Because I think values are so core to how you operate on a day-to-day basis, how you communicate, how you work together, how you share, because obviously that's really important in alliances. So that must have a big impact.
It has to be of mutual benefit.
Yeah.
And, you can gain, as an alliance partner, you can gain resources that you wouldn't otherwise have. Mm-hmm. Equally, you can, and everybody's always looking to create a competitive differentiation in the market. How do I differentiate myself from the competition? And alliances is a huge leverage point for that. And the third aspect of it is mitigating risk as well. As we go into emerging markets, and we might talk about this in a few minutes, of the key areas of the wave that we're experiencing now with AI, the whole area of ransomware protection and security and sort of cyber threat architecture that needs to be delivered to our customers. One thing I didn't obviously start off by introducing, I introduced myself, but not the company I work for. So, Cohesity, who is now number one in our marketplace, we have over 13,000 customers. We have 85% footprint in the Fortune 100 and hundreds of exabytes under management. We are a company that really is founded on we talk about the 5 S's in our company: it's speed, scalability, security, simplicity, and smarts. How do we drive that? Generative AI capability to extract insights from our customers' data. And we absolutely couldn't have got to where we are in the market without our alliances. And in fact, fairly recently, we formed a new alliance offering called the Data Security Alliance.
Okay.
So, we're forming alliances with new ecosystem partners and players who, this phrase, it takes a village, right, to move everything forward. And that is absolutely the future for our customers and for the growth of certainly AI and security.
Because I think companies are much more open, aren't they, to alliances? I think, I remember, because like you, I started in the late 80s and into the 90s, where it was, oh, well, I don't want to do it. If you can't do it all, I don't want to deal with you. And whereas I think the complete opposite is true today. I think people, because it's such a complex landscape now, customers are much more likely to accept that you can't be good at everything and that you have to bring in specialists.
And they don't want the lock-in often as well, right?
No, exactly.
Yeah. And they are very open to what I would term as a best-in-class solution.
Yeah.
Yes.
And what I've seen work really well is really in 3 areas. One of them is what I call an equity stake. So you have 2 vendors who form a new company. And they both have an equity stake in that company. I mean, a classic example of that in the last 10 years would be VCE. Virtual computing environment. So that was Cisco and EMC at the time, and VMware formed a new company, and they went out with a converged infrastructure stack, vBlock. Then you have a non-equity stake company where you it's an alliance where you're not forming a new company, but there's clearly a vested interest. So with Cohesity, we're developing and going out to market with companies like NVIDIA, who are also investors.
Yes.
Cohesity. And then the third model, which I think is as valid for customers and can be extremely profitable, is that meet in the channel model, where it means that the vendors, the participating parties, can all kind of maximize their business model. They're not sacrificing margin or anything like that. They're maximizing the value that they're delivering, but they are wrapping it in a solution and validating all of that for the customer.
So where do you see some challenges? Because as Ice.Blue.Sky, we obviously have alliances on a slightly different scale, but we do. And what I always find quite interesting is there are some that just don't get off the ground, not for a lack of trying, but maybe customers aren't buying into it for whatever reason, or there's not been the right opportunity that's come along. So where have you seen some of those stumble over the years?
Yeah, it's a great question, because there's actually an organisation run by a guy called Mike Nevin. I don't know if you've come across that name. No. You'll find him on LinkedIn. I don't know him personally, but I've read a lot of his work. He did a study, and he brought out a book called the Strategic Alliance Handbook, and he does a really great kind of soup to nuts, as the Americans would say, analysis of the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to. It's a very analytical approach. Yeah. It's and he talks about why alliances fail. And we all know what good looks like, right? We can see that when we go to the IT press any day of the week. But oftentimes, I think that alliances can fail. There is never one individual reason why they fail. I would say, first and foremost, it's misaligned objectives.
Yeah.
It's that lack of communication, that lack of rigor. Getting back to what I talked about earlier about building those 4 pillars. If you don't have that in place to begin with, you can bet your life you're gonna hit some speed bumps along the way. So misaligned objectives, mistrust.
Yes.
Increasingly, you find that vendors oftentimes will, be developing technology that might overlap with somebody that they've got an alliance with.
Yeah.
I mean, we term it as co-opetition, right?
Yeah.
It's like, we've got a similar type of product that kind of overlaps you, infringes you maybe.
Yeah.
And so then, that mistrust creeps in. But I think it comes down to what I said earlier. If you don't have that open communication and trust, and you don't build on that relationship, and it takes effort and it takes time, then I think you're putting your alliance at risk.
Yeah. And I think that's part of the that's the part that culture plays as well, isn't it? I think if you share the same set of values and the same things are important to you, that can really help build that trust.
It's that commitment, isn't it, to your strategic pillar that makes sure that it goes down the organisation. Right. The purpose is understood. Yeah. And everyone's got the energy behind it with the alignment there, moving it forward to your village analogy, right?
Right. And just to speak in practical terms, just to give some, objective feedback, I've been, I started my alliance kind of career, if you will, at NetApp. I was there 3.5 years. Then I was 4 years, I was leading the EMEA alliances for Nimble Storage prior to the acquisition by HPE. And then I've been at Cohesity now 7.5 years. In that time, I've seen what good looks like and what bad looks like.
Mentioning no names.
I could almost say the highs get higher and the lows get lower. But that's life, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But equally, when you do have that tuned engine, it is the highest growth engine that you can have within an organization, within a field sales organization.
I was thinking, as you were talking about that powerful engine in terms of the sales motion, I think a lot that then comes into that is you've got the core alliance organisation together, we're behind, we understand the purpose, we're moving things forward. But then you do have the field sales organisation, right? And we then need to get them behind. We need to get them activated and enabled and all of that great stuff.
Yeah.
What lessons have you learnt there, Paul?
Oh, boy. How long have you got?
As long as you want. I love enablement.
One of the, as somebody who's focused 100% on alliances, like you say, you're working and you're supporting a field sales organisation that are carrying a number, they're going out, they've got the trusted relationships with their customers. But, I get up every morning and I'm living and breathing that alliance. And it's really tough sometimes to also remember or to give guide rails and coaching our sales field organizations that not only are they selling our value to the end user customer, but in a certain sense, they have to sell to our alliance partner. Yeah. So in the case, I specifically look after our HPE relationship. Yeah. So I try and put myself in the shoes of my HPE colleagues. Yeah. And they have a portfolio that's, it's amazing, but it's incredibly broad. Yeah. So their sellers have, I've got a lot to onboard and in terms of, airtime that we can get with them. Yeah. So we have to be very selective about how we qualify, who we work with. But when we get it right, that is great. When we get it wrong, it can be a tough, a tough slog. But so in terms of lessons learned, it's about being very, very focused on qualifying in or qualifying out fast. Yes. That's but also again, bringing, being able to demonstrate and show and measure the value that you bring in. And I think that kind of, when we turn and pivot to what's coming in the next 24, 48 months and onwards, there's going to be, and I already feel it happening now, there's going to be a big shift in the way that Alliances is working and operating. It's already pivoting and moving away from being an out-and-out commercial sales-focused alliance to being far more of a technology alliance.
I agree. Absolutely. You see so many developments at the moment, don't you? And new things coming to market, especially driven by the AI sort of trend as it is at the moment.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Again, not only AI, but I think we're going to see an acceleration around cyber threat protection. and the ability to recovery. I mean,
Absolutely.
we've seen, most recently we saw the retailers attacks,
Yes,
like,
absolutely.
Co-op and Harrods and, the Marks and Spencers.
Yeah.
And then, tragically today, the on the BBC News feed, the press release around the NHS saying that, they've now had, sadly, a death impacted from one of the ransomware attacks that took place against the blood services for King's College Hospital. That's serious.
Yeah.
I mean, so what we're doing in our data security alliance and ecosystem is now building the resiliency and the recovery that literally is going to be impacting people's lives.
Absolutely.
And I think that's going to accelerate this ecosystem. And we're going to form new alliances. I'm right now. I'm talking locally. I mean, we have our global Cohesity alliances, but we're always talking to ecosystem partners. I'm talking right now to an organization called Spectra, who are very innovative company in the cyber insurance space.
Interesting.
So they're bringing products to market which are unique for MSPs.
Yeah.
To help mitigate risk, indemnify, give the customers confidence about the protection. Because as everybody says, it's not a case of if you're going to get attacked, it's a case of when.
Yeah.
And how you recover.
So if those partnerships then are getting more technical, and I'm actually thinking about another episode that we're going to be recording today about the disconnect between buyers and the sellers of technology. So if those partnerships are getting more technical in nature, that's going to make how that gets talked about and taken to market. It was not so much with the technical audiences, but with the C-suite, for example, the financial commercial audiences, how you get across that value, that combined value of the technology.
Yeah. And there's going to be a gap. There's going to be a gap for some time.
Gap. Yeah.
But I saw this wave, back in early 2000s when I was involved in a number of startups where we were bringing, it was the emergence of really open systems, storage area networking,
web services,
etc. And all of the alliances back then were all technology focused, which evolved into far more commercially aligned, etc.
So maybe it's a maturity.
It's absolutely
maturity curve.
Maturity curve, and I think we're going to see the same thing again. Although I think the curve will be a little bit longer. With AI, it's what's important is as vendors, as part of the overall ecosystem, that we keep ourselves informed. And so I talked earlier about some resources like Mike Nevin and his his alliance best practices. There's another organization that I'm familiar with, a good friend of mine who runs a company called Cresco Consulting, and Cresco are basically a cyber marketing consultancy. So they've spent decades in the security space. So they're helping to make sense of a lot of this for vendors.
Yeah.
All right. And how do you articulate your value to the consumers?
Well, and to make it different to the other partners. So especially in the vendor, the vendor's got lots of different partners, and again, some of whom will be specialists. How do you articulate that value, combined value, in a way that makes sense to the buyer?
Yep. And getting back to what we're doing at Cohesity, we have a focus on really recoverability. Recoverability. That time to recover. That's really
and that's the stressful part.
Of course,
it's just so relevant right now.
We are AI-driven data security and management company. That's what we do, and the largest part of our immediate value add is how quickly can we get your business back?
Which is, that is the difference. If you look at
Co-op versus Marks and Spencer's.
Yeah.
As an
Yeah, 'cause the
example,
co-op
right?
just pulled the plug, turned everything off,
Yeah, right.
and then got up and running much more quickly.
I remember that week. I couldn't get my halloumi cheese.
No,
There was no. I mean, first world problems. You know.
it's a very Middle England problem, isn't it? What am I going to do?
What a tragedy. Yeah. But I mean, in real terms, though, I mean, look, these are people's livelihoods. These are people's
Yeah.
And
businesses,
it's
right?
millions and millions and millions of pounds
It's
lost,
just
right?
ticking up
It's
the
going
min-
to take
as
them
the
a
minutes
huge
go on.
amount of time to recover from that.
Definitely. So I think this is a big topic, but we are actually out of time, I'm afraid.
Okay.
We are, but it
Well,
is a
thank
big...
you so much
Yeah,
for
no, it's been
inviting me along to
interesting.
ramble
Oh
about
no!
this.
Thank you for coming.
No, it's really good. I think it's a very... I think if you're outside of alliances, particularly on the marketing side, it's sort of... It's easy to forget about the huge amounts of value that sit within that you can leverage from a marketing point of view.
What would Archimedes do?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, see, nicely tied round. I like that. Well, thank you, Paul. Really
No, thank
appreciate you
Charlotte.
being
Yeah,
here.
thank
Francesca, for
you.
inviting me.